Hi, Mimi. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so glad to see you in person. It's been like a year, I think, right?
I know I miss you.
Yeah, I miss you so much too. I'm so grateful for everything that you did to help me get my business off the ground with Beautycounter, actually, funny enough. But you've been more than that, just instrumental in so many different ways because of your background and knowledge in finance and investments and so many different things. We have very similar mindsets. So
Exactly.
always been that connection point. But I'm so excited today to introduce you to Mimi MacLean, who is not only the founder of Badass CEO. She, as I mentioned, she's got so many gifts, but she is also an angel investor. She's an author. She recently just published her book. And she is, as I mentioned, with Beautycounter, she's a managing director, one of the first salespeople with Beautycounter, but also was an investor, a seed investor of Beautycounter. So um, we all come to the table with so many different gifts. And I wanted to invite Mimi on because she's got this eclectic background that spans across just so many different industries and categories. And frankly, Mimi was one of the people that I started Opportunity Knocks with as a live. So I wanted to
That's
revisit
true.
this, bring it all back full circle, girl, right?
Yes. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming back on and making this a real interview.
I think that was the beginning of the pandemic when that was a
It
year and a
was.
half ago,
It
maybe.
was because speaking of opportunities, I think that I was given the opportunity to start a podcast prior to the pandemic and was like, whoa, that seems like a lot of work. I'm not sure about that. And then because of the pandemic, a live turned into a podcast. So what a gift.
No, it's true. And I think in that time, I don't even know if I had my podcast yet or if
You
it was
didn't.
just
You didn't. You started yours. I
like
remember
in
us
June,
brainstorming Badass
like,
CEO.
yeah, like a year and a half ago.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing. So why don't we back up and tell everybody about your amazing background? And I think that people need to hear a little bit more about how you came to Badass CEO.
Sure. I kind of like to think of myself as the jack of all trades, master of none. But anyway, my background has been in retail and investment banking and finance, and I have my CPA and my MBA. And when I had started having, I have 5 kids, as you know. When I started having kids, I became an angel investor where I invested in different companies, women and male run companies. But I really took an affinity towards women run companies. And so when we invest in companies, I also like to be a part of them and kind of get involved. And that's one reason why I signed up to be a Beautycounter consultant, because we had invested in Beautycounter when it was the friends and family round before there was even product. And then I decided to jump in just to learn more about the industry and to see the behind the scenes. And I had done retail before, but I'd never done direct marketing. So I wanted to kind of learn about that retail aspect of the business. And so I did that. But the reason why I started Badass CEO was about a year and a half ago. I actually have another podcast called Lyme 360. I have, as you know, a chronic Lyme warrior. And I decided to interview doctors and other practitioners every week about different ways to heal from Lyme. And I really, really enjoy doing that. And I thought to myself, like, what other avenue can I do a podcast? And I was like, well, I'm already talking to these female CEOs, and other, founders. Um, as an angel investor, I'm like, wouldn't it be fun to do a podcast where I'm actually interviewing them as if I'm interviewing them to raise capital?
Mhm.
And so that's how it started. And then all of a sudden, the name came to me, and I couldn't believe that it hadn't been taken. So I was like,
Yeah.
okay, it's meant to be. And so I jumped on it, and here we are a year and a half later. So I interview female CEOs every week and kind of telling them the stories and trying to figure out why. And as I've been doing this, I realized the trend, which was shocking to me, is only 1.7% of female CEOs ever reach $1 million in sales,
Wow.
which was mind blowing to me, like how it could be so little, even though 50% of women start new businesses, right? And so that's kind of where I've been like taking this podcast, is trying to figure out why, Like what makes some women successful and some not? Like why do some succeed and reach that, become the 1.7% and others don't? And
Mhm.
so I kind of been diving into that. And that's why I wrote the book, because we
Yeah.
kind of talk about where I saw the trends as an angel investor and as talking to all these women, where I saw the common theme. I definitely started seeing a common theme of why I thought.
And
So
so there's two questions that I have for you out of that. First is, can you define what an angel investor is and and what seed rounds are? Because I think, there's so much that people either know or don't know about it, right? And most women that I interview and or interact with coaching wise are not clear on when they need to seek investments or investing or not. So, can
right.
we talk a little bit about that?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
So I like to think of angel investors like you invest when it's very high risk. So I tell people like do not invest as an angel investor unless you're willing to lose that cash.
Mhm.
It's very high risk because like think about it. I invested in Beautycounter when there wasn't even product.
So you didn't
She
know.
It was all concept. I wasn't able to try it. It's not like you're really that some founders want people involved. Smart money is what they call it when they can actually call and ask for advice. But a lot of founders don't want advice. So you have to know what you want and what you're comfortable with as far as that's concerned. So for seed money, I would say it's the very beginning. There's usually not a valuation, or if it is, it's very low. There might be a convertible debt. And at that point, that means like you're not getting like an equity in it. So you're
Mhm.
getting a discount. So when they finally do value it in the seed round or later on, um, that's when you're going to get a percentage of like the bump up. You'll get a discount of the whatever that valuation is. Usually it's
Mhm.
like a 20% discount on whatever they wind up valuing the company at. Now, what I tell people is I would not, you want to be careful when you're looking for money that you don't get too much money early on when you're
Mhm.
still not valued that high. Because think about it, you only have a pie so big, right? And right now in the beginning, your pie is smaller because you haven't gotten the traction yet. You haven't taken the risk away, so therefore you want to make sure that you don't ask for too much money because then you got to give away too much of the pie. So you
Exactly.
just take away really what you want. So it's really risky. So you have to find you're not going to VCs in the very beginning because they're risk. They want it
Not
later on.
guaranteed. Yeah.
Yeah, they want a company that's like already 100 million
Solid.
valuation. They're going to take it to $1 billion or something to that nature where there's already a trend. It's already been proven. There's a track record. You already know your business model. In the beginning, when you launch a company, you kind of still tweaking and figuring out what your messaging is, what's your risk, what's your business model. And that hasn't really been solidified yet. So um, you also you want to make sure when you're deciding if you want to invest, once you bring in VCs and really establish like private equity fund, they're going to usually want, a board seat. They're going to want
Mhm.
to say, you're going to have to really start reporting, like most of the companies that we invest in as an angel investor, we're lucky if we get financials from them. Like
Mhm.
they're not required to give
Well,
us financials every month or every quarter or every year. Usually every year you have to get something to report for, tax
and
purposes,
like
but
what dollar amount are we talking about with like angel investment? Is that different like per company? Do they give
mhm.
you a number that says we're looking to raise this amount? Do they do
Yeah,
salons like where they have these dinners and basically ask people for money, or how does that?
yeah, like, like for example, usually they're typically looking for a couple $1 million, right? But that's amongst investors, like many
Mhm.
investors. So,
Mhm.
there's people like I know when we first started doing this, you're putting in 25 grand or whatever. Now, or you can also join if anyone is listening and wants to become an angel investor or you're a CEO and listening, you can find angel groups. There are a lot
Mhm.
of angel groups now out there where you can join and say, okay, I want to be an angel investor, but I just want to learn right now. I don't want to put up 100 grand. I only want to put up 5 grand. And so
Mhm.
you're joining as a group. And so they're, getting 20 women together to put in 5 grand to make up the 100 grand.
Mhm.
Right.
Totally.
So you can do that as well to kind of reduce your risk, but
And how do
learn.
you find an angel group?
There's tons out there. Just Google them. They're every city, especially if you want to do something local. You can do women. There's ones that are also geared towards like only women, only finance, only,
Mhm.
biotech, like whatever you interest, like go, because then you can also contribute to the group and
Yeah.
listen usually to the due diligence calls and
Would you
whatnot.
say it's a little bit like, on the reverse, for example, like if you were going to get angel investments from investors, it's the reverse where you're joining a group. So you should almost like interview them to make sure that you're comfortable with this is the group that I want to be a part of beyond the category that you're investing in.
Right. So you're asking as an investor or
As as a person that would like to become an angel investor, if you want to join an angel group,
yes.
like because this is your cohort, correct?
Yes, exactly. So you can find there's tons of them in like New York City. There's some in LA. I joined a group in LA and it was small. There was like 5 of us. Yeah, we took it like an angel class and then there was 5 of us and then we decided to stay on and keep investing on our own. And then we kind of after we invested our deals kind of, paid out and so then we kind of went on our way. But there are other groups that are around that you can join. But so like I said, you can just decide what your focus is. Like if you only want to invest in like consumer products or women or finance. So that's kind of where they're more like broken down into as far as like either geography or what they're actually investing in because they all kind of have a mission of what they're investing in. So wait, what else can I tell you about finance wise? So that's another thing I wrote about in my book is like I definitely think there are women that I've interviewed that are afraid to ask for money because they don't know what to do. So they don't ask for money and they don't grow quick enough.
Hmm.
Right. I think like look at Beautycounter, for example. She was not afraid to ask for money. She raised a lot of money really fast. She was very fortunate that she was able to get that amount of funding for, especially for somebody who was not already established in that industry. But it allowed her to catapult herself like
To the
really
next
early
level.
on to that next level and grow sales fast. I think a lot of women
So
I
don't be
tend
afraid to ask is kind of
do
like the
not
messaging
be
I'm
afraid to
hearing.
ask. It's a lot of work though. I mean, and don't be discouraged. Like everybody I talk to that has raised capital, I think they talk to 100 people before they get one investor,
Mm.
especially the big guys, or you just got to keep asking. Like if you're asking, your rich next door neighbor, hey, can I show you my deck, whatever.
Yeah.
And if they say no, then be like, do you know anybody else that would be interested in a business like this? Right. So you're always you
You're always
never know.
playing
It's
it forward. You're always trying to
yeah.
find the next opportunity, right?
Right. Yeah. So just keep asking. You're going to find somebody, and maybe you're hitting them at the wrong time. And it's kind of like Beautycounter and trying to
Yes.
sell Beautycounter. It's like you just keep asking because you never know what door is going to open. But
Open.
don't be discouraged. But I would say one message I want to get across is I see a lot of women. I don't want to say her name, but there's one woman I interviewed, and I remember saying like her product is so great, and I'm like, you've done so much, you've gotten so far. But it took you a while. I said, why did it take you? She's like, because I did it all. I didn't want to give any of my company away. I did it all with like what I earned, I put back into the company. I did
Mhm.
it all. Earn 100%. And I was thinking to myself, which is great because you now own 100%, but
Yes.
maybe you could have been there in 5 years instead of 10 years where you were.
Mhm.
So you've left stuff on the table. So
So that sounds like you need to know when to ask for help.
yes, or be willing to like, just be
Acknowledge
willing.
what maybe you don't know.
Yes, or
Mhm.
be willing to also give up a percentage at some
Mhm.
point. Once you already
Mhm.
have like income coming in and you can kind of leverage off of that. But there's also a lot of opportunity now where someone was saying like, is it Amazon Finance? There's one of that they can actually give you loans based on your receipts coming in. So there's so many new options right now to get funding that you don't necessarily have to like do a whole bank loan and go apply for a bank loan, which takes so much time and it's very hard. And they usually say no. There's a lot of opportunity now that you can like kind of play off of your
Your
sales
current
that you have
finance
coming in.
situation.
Yeah, exactly. So
So you mentioned something earlier, you talked about like a deck, right?
mhm.
And I think another thing that I hear a lot of women talk about is that there's obstacles around the logistical part, right? So it's like, how do you become a badass CEO? Well, part of that is never giving up, right? And so talk to me about the logistics. Like, I mean, so you have to have a deck. I'm sure there's a
Mhm.
format. And then my
There's a
question
format.
is, you mentioned like a lot of times that investors never see the financials. Like, do you have to have a business plan in place? Do you have to come with your P&L?
Well,
what is it? Profit and loss?
your deck is kind of like your business. It's kind of replaced the business plan
Okay,
now.
got it. Oh,
You
that's
know,
good
if
to
you're,
know.
yeah, so it's kind of more of a visual presentation of your deck. Everything's kind of boiled down into like a 15-minute presentation that you would give somebody. And so all the information has to be on there. It's kind of like the condensed version of your
And
business
if they
plan.
want more, then they're going to ask for more
Correct.
after that.
Yeah. Yeah. And you'll usually ask for just for like a term sheet or maybe your financials, but that's it. But what I would say to you as far as like what you need in place, I think one thing you got to realize is like you are a CEO if you're running your own business right now. And what does that mean? It's like you're like a contractor to a house that you're building. So you're not going to get out there and like start hammering away and start like running the electrical and
Mhm.
start like you're not doing all that. You're not painting the walls and hanging the wallpaper. You are the contractor. So you're hiring the wallpaper. You're hiring the guy who's going to hang, you know, do everything. You're going to
Need
do
your
everything out.
experts, your
Yeah.
team.
So right. So whatever your expertise is and you feel comfortable doing, great. Like, so for example, I'm a CPA. I don't do my books.
Mhm.
Like, cause I can hire that out for cheaper than I'm going to do sitting there doing it. Like
For the number of
bench.com
hours.
is, yeah, like I use bench.com right now, which is amazing. And it's for a couple $100 a month. They do all of my like input into QuickBooks or whatever their program is. And they go through, and then at the end of the year, they do my tax return, right? So it's like, why would I spend the time doing that when I can just outsource that to a specialty? Same thing with like, you know, CorpNet. They do all of my like filings and everything I need to for state compliance and federal compliance, right? So outsource as much as you can so you can keep thinking about the future of your business. Same thing with the deck. Like you can do a deck or you can hire companies that help you make the deck and make
It's
it
sort
look
of
pretty.
like know what you're good at and not stay in your lane, because I think as an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
we can never just have one lane. We have so many lanes. But I think it's like ask for help, know when to seek help, and get the support you need so that you could get to the goal that you want,
Mhm.
right? Because it's just like with coaching, you're not gonna, if some people, just like you had said earlier, just like when you have a trainer, you need a trainer because you're going to show up and you're accountable. It's the same thing with
Mhm.
coaching, right? It's the same thing with being an entrepreneur. If you need to hire out to the expert to do your taxes or whatever it is, then that's what you need to do. And you just count it as an expense.
Right. And the one thing that someone explained to me once, and it's so true, if you know, like, especially for you, like where you're coaching and you know how much money you make an hour, if you know what you make an hour, say, you know, you're making $200 an hour, anything that you can outsource for less than $200 an hour, you should be outsourcing that because you're losing, there's an opportunity cost to you. You know, so say it's $50 an hour to get an accountant to enter your thing and you're still entering your, you know, like I have a doctor friend, so she makes like $500 an hour and she's still literally doing her payroll.
Wow.
And I'm like, no, 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 no. Like you need to be like outsource that because that
You can
hour that you
focus
would
on
have,
taking clients.
yeah, because you would have made $500 that you just lost,
Yeah.
right? So the $200 it cost you to do to payroll, you just left $300 on the table,
Mhm.
right? And so that's one thing you got to look at, like when you're trying to decide to do something or not. It's like, can I be making more money, or should I be using this opportunity and time to like really focus on growing my business and let other people. You're putting in systems in place as you grow your business, because if anyone wants to buy your business or invest in your business, they got to know that that business runs without you. And
Yeah.
so you have to put systems in place so that that business is running without you.
So I think you bring up a good point is around systems, because I think that's one of the things, whether it be habits, structure, or systems, right? And I think that a lot of people don't understand how to create those systems. So how would you suggest that when somebody is starting their business for the first time, that they start to create a system that works for them? Whether
Mhm.
that be a system of like, when am I working? You know, because people have the idea that when you're an entrepreneur that you have flexibility, right? Or which you do, but then what is the time that you're going to spend working on your business so it grows and you
Mhm.
have more sales, right?
Yep. Yep. Systems, I think it's been like this past year, I spent a lot of time on like this whole system concept because I think everything in your life, you should have a system for it. Right. And I'm just learning this now at 50 years old. I'm like, I tell my teenagers now, I'm like, set up a system for everything in your life, like where you're keeping your notes and just where your tasks and everything, because you waste a lot of time if you don't do that. So to answer your question as a CEO, I think where I have learned, and it might be obvious to other people, but to me it wasn't, is the night before is where you have to get yourself organized. So when you come in the next day, especially if you have employees, you're giving out the tasks and you're giving the direction of what everyone should be doing. So everyone's on the same page. I think it was like Elon Musk that he did a whole like TED talk about this. And was it Elon Musk? It was about like velocity. Like you want to make sure your vectors, like think of each employee as a vector. Right. So if you're not giving them direction, they're all going in different directions. Right. So the vectors,
and they don't know where to go. They don't know how to invest their time.
So if you add up the vectors, they're not going anywhere. It's literally going to just be like a point, because it's like 5 that way, 4 that way, 5 + 4 is 1. You're only still at the same place. Whereas if you're giving direction and every employee is a vector going in the same direction, now you can add up each of those vectors to create the path that you're going on. Right. So that's super important, is like getting yourself organized. The other thing someone told me once was, which is really what I've been trying to do now, is everything you do, even if you're doing it right now, start writing it out. So if you were to not show up work tomorrow, someone can open up the spreadsheet or the document that you've like, this is how you, produce a podcast for this week, so
what are the steps?
Write everything out. So even when that person either gets promoted, who's doing the work, or leaves, it's there.
Goes back to the systems.
Go back to the system. So create a system. That means just documenting everything, and then making sure there's like, you follow that and see if anything's falling through, like the cracks, or if you've like, there's redundancy or there's inefficiency there that you can like either, give it to somebody else to do, or get rid of it, or if maybe you don't even need to do it
more efficiently.
So,
I have a question for you. So you have 5 kids, you run 2 podcasts, you invest, you have a lot you do. I mean, we could go on, but how do you do it all when we're talking about systems, right? Because let's face it. I mean, I just did a tidbit that I released today on like working from home with the 3 kids, and then my husband's still here, right? The 3 kids, thank God, are at school now, but still, we still have to worry about them. So how do you do it with 5 kids and everything that you do?
I don't do it all well. I think that's the problem. Like you were saying before we jumped on, like the book that I just launched, like, have I properly, given it the attention it needed? No. Like things have I left my kid at school? Yes. Have I forgotten to get on
bus stop yesterday?
Yes. Have I, forgotten to get on an Instagram live or a podcast with somebody? Yes. So yes, things have fallen through the cracks. I definitely, like this morning, as someone was supposed to get on with me, I definitely have now, like, just like, she was like, "Oh my God, are you mad?" I'm like, "No, I'm not going to get mad at things like that." People have gotten mad at me, but I'm like, you know what? Life's too short. Like, this is not, we're both alive. We're both healthy. So no, it doesn't matter to me. Like, so I put things in perspective real fast. 2, I would say, is I've empowered my kids. I did a podcast yesterday with another woman, and she has 6 kids, and she has the largest finance company in Canada.
Wow.
And she's a Real Housewives of Canada. And so I was talking to her, and I was like, "How do you do it?" And she's like, we both agreed this is what we do. Is we both like make our kids do their own lunch boxes and empower them very early. Like, instead of sitting there, yes, I could be packing their lunches, but that's an hour that, I just empowered them to take care of themselves. Like,
and they learn to be responsible.
They learn to be, you need to teach them in your mind. I know we want to take care of our kids, but at the same time, we need to teach them that, like, at 18, like, you need to be able to like take care of yourself when you go to college, and know how to make eggs and make your bed and do your laundry and do
how to
all
coexist, because you're going to have a roommate. So you better not drive him crazy.
Correct.
Or drive him crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. The one thing I have not mastered that it weighs on me is the whole like cooking dinner thing. Because I want to cook dinner for my kids every night. It just doesn't seem to ever happen. I don't know what happens. So we wind up always doing like a takeout, or I pull something out of the freezer, or I make tacos, or so
I relate
it's not.
to you. I feel the same way. I think that some people, again, I think it's like where your focus and priorities are on. And I know you and I like to eat good food and enjoy
Yes.
good food. And we certainly like to cook as well. I mean, I'm a certified chef, but it's not that
Are you really? Wow.
I am actually. It was one of the things I did when I left the corporate world. I quickly learned that I didn't want to be a chef. I was
Yeah, that's
like,
a lot of
oh, I
work.
like to eat good food, but geez, I have to chop all this stuff.
It's a lot of, that's the problem, right?
Exactly.
And then I was
Prep, it's
doing,
that whole prep stuff again.
yeah, but for a little while I was actually cooking great meals. And then all of a sudden you realize with 5 kids, somebody's not going to like it, or they have a comment, oh, it's too salty. I don't like the flavor. I didn't want that. I don't like salmon. And you're like, wait, why did I just spend 2 hours of my day cooking this meal that no one likes? Like, forget it. Like, I'm done. I'm out. Like,
Exactly. Well, and I think, you know, let's face it, in the early ages of our children's lives, we probably spent a lot of trial and error on a lot of that stuff. And I think we need to go back and value ourselves and our time of how we like to spend our time with our families, right? But how do we like to spend our time in general? And I think when all of our children have such heavy schedules, right? And so in which case, would you prefer to be making them a dinner that they're going to complain about? Possibly, possibly one of the five will. Um, you know, that's just statistics.
yeah, of course.
But, or would you rather be recording a podcast with somebody and you might get a lot from that?
Right, exactly. And so, I'm driving them around to their activities. And as you know, all of our kids are very busy, right? There's a lot of activities after school and stuff like that. So, I think in picking them up from school and driving them, and to me, I value that more than making sure I'm home cooking dinner while somebody else is picking them up, and driving them to their activities. So,
Exactly. I
yeah.
feel the same way. So it actually makes me feel quite at home and at comfort to know that you struggle with those things as well. But it sounds like you've made the choice that you gain so much by having these podcasts and working that it almost gives you an semblance of what your past life was.
Mhm. Mhm. And you know what? It's funny because like my daughter came home the other day and she said, this was my seventh grader. And she goes, my teacher said to me today, like, I know so much about politics and what's going on in the world and world events. Like she complimented her. She's like, you know more than anybody else in the class. And I was like, okay, I might not cook you a meal, but I'm explaining to you like what's going on in the world. And I tried to like enlighten her about like everything, the world events and what's happening and business and thinking like for yourself and as an entrepreneur. So I feel like, I'm going to give in other ways that I'm better at.
Or you choose to be better at.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the book for a minute.
Hmm.
I think one of the things that a lot of people will say when you have a service-based business is, content, 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 have a course, have a book, uh, on and on and on, have a successful Instagram and everything else. So tell me a little bit about your process, writing the book, how it came up, um, the subject matter, like what do you cover? What am I going to get from it?
Sure. Yes. I really wanted to try to figure out why, or at least my take on why I think women have been not as successful as men, and we can sit here and blame them and all we want, but obviously like there's other issues or there's other reasons why that is, right? Because
Definitely.
why are some successful and some not, so why only 5% of women in the workforce get to become a CEO, or why only 1.7% ever reach $1 million in sales, and what can we do to help change that? And so
Mhm.
that's kind of what the crux of the book is, and I saw a trend. It's like resilience. Women who are resilient and don't give up are the ones,
Mhm.
like every single one of them will tell you it's resiliency. It's being able to pivot.
Yes.
Almost every single one I talked to, what they started their business at was not what they wound up becoming successful with.
Mhm.
Right. And just
I've
start.
heard that same thing.
Yeah. And think we're perfectionists as women in general, and we want to do it all. So we don't ask for help.
Mhm.
We don't want to show our cards because then we think we're women and it shows weakness. Whereas men are the first one to walk in and ask for help and be like, hey, can you do this for me? Can you do that for me?
Exactly.
Right. Or they walk into a situation and they think they know more than they do. Whereas women walk into a situation and assume they know less than they actually do. So I think walking in with confidence and getting that, you know, not having that imposter syndrome is, I think, a
Mhm.
huge part of it. But asking for help, that was another thing I found really astonishing, is that think it was like 65 or 70% of men have mentors and only 30% of women have mentors.
Wow, that's so
And I
interesting.
and I look back on my life and I never really had a mentor. And I
Mhm.
would think to myself, like, if I had a mentor, would I have, how would my path be different?
Mhm.
So I thought that
I
was
love
really
that
interesting.
statistic, actually. That's really
Mhm,
interesting to note.
mhm.
It's actually one of the reasons why I decided to become a coach was because I felt like we were lacking mentorship and leadership in the corporate world.
Yeah.
Obviously, we know that expands way beyond that, but that's amazing. Hmm.
And I don't think, and you're going to probably hate me for saying this, but I don't
No,
think women are as helpful with other women as they
I
should
don't
be.
hate you for saying that. I actually just cited that this morning on somebody else's podcast.
Because I feel like, people always like want to blame the man,
Oh,
but
no, I love
having,
working with men. I don't know
yeah,
how I ended up like only focusing on women, but I love working with men. But you and
yeah,
I are similar that way. We work
yeah,
well with men.
exactly. Because I had lots of brothers and I worked in, investment banking, that's all men and all that. But you know, I find men just kind of let things roll off their back. They don't care what color shoes you're wearing. They don't care if your hair has been brushed. Like they don't care, right?
Mhm,
Whereas women, I feel like in general, because we're very critical of ourselves. Like I'm
mhm.
the first one to be like, oh God, I don't look good today, or my eyes are puffy, or I've gained some weight, or and so we kind of like are that way to other people, like they'll walk in and be like, "Ooh, why is she wearing those colored tights with that outfit?" And so and then we're not as supportive in general, I think too. I think we as women need to make sure we can reach down. I can name some women who, you help getting there, but then once they get there, they don't want to help you up. And I don't know if it's because they feel
It's
like
that ladder approach.
yeah,
Yeah.
like pull up other women. Like once you reach there, I know it was hard. I know it was probably much harder to get where you are than it is even now. Because we do have a great opportunity as women right now,
We have an
right? Because
amazing opportunity as women right now.
because there's being a light shine on the fact that there are not enough women in the workforce, and women are not getting the money that they should be getting to raise money. Because actually, if you invest as an angel investor in a woman business, you have a better chance of getting your money back and more money from a woman than from a man. There's a statistic for that as well. So go for it. Like we as women just need to help each other out and go for it and be confident and make sure you ask. And I think that's the problem. And I think a lot of women, we like our life. We want to be, and I think a lot of women choose to step out of the corporate world because they don't want to have to balance it all. They want more flexibility. And so therefore there's just not the opportunity for other companies to pick women because there are a lot of women choose, like I chose to leave the workforce because I wanted to raise a family, right? And I think there's a lot of other women who are in the same boat.
Yes,
Um,
definitely. So my question is like in the book, at the end of it, am I going to feel empowered to, I understand that, shining the light that there's not enough women and that the commonality of character traits is resilience and determination. And I see those things as well. Um, am I going to walk away understanding how to get there?
yeah. So it's funny. One of my friends said to me, a lot of my friends their kids are in college now, they're like, I sent this book to my daughter
Mm,
because they're like, it's almost like what color is your parachute for
mm,
the
mhm.
21st century, where it's like, I kind of dive into like, know what you want out of life. Like, know if you want to raise a family. If you want to raise a family, then you're not going to want a job where you're going to need to put in 100 hours a week, like, so just kind of know that going in.
Be honest with yourself about it.
Be honest with yourself, right? And then so it's kind of like looking at who you are, making sure you have like that mentor, making sure you have the self-confidence and posture. So like we all have it. So just put it aside. Like I kind of walk through kind of all the kind of hurdles that I have seen other women, they're not thinking big enough. Like if you're making candles, like that's great. Now think big. Like where can you be selling those? Sell them online. Don't just sell them at the like, the
At
local
the point of
farmers market.
display. Yeah,
Like
exactly.
think big, go for it. Like be the number one candle person. Like don't like sell yourself short. I
And
think a
why
lot of
not
us,
think big?
right. And
Yeah.
a lot of times, like I have had people who've come to me asking for money, and I love the concept. And the reason why I have not invested is because it's not a big enough market. because I'm like, why are you not selling it to here and here and here? Well, I'm like, I'm not like, I need to know, because if I'm going to take this risk as an angel investor, I need to know it has potential of being a unicorn, $1 billion business. I don't want it to be $100,000 business in 10 years. Like, that's not going to get me the risk reward that I need to. So you have to think bigger, 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 and making sure that that market that you're in can be bigger. Or maybe you don't want it to be that. You don't want that kind of a company, and you just want to just have it out of your house, and that's okay. But you just want to make sure
But
you
know
have
that and be clear about what you're trying to create. But like, just like you said, that so many women pivot as they're launching to something different, and it gets something completely different gets created out of what their original concept was.
Exactly.
So here's another question for you. So when you're launching and stuff, and you have your structure, and say you get derailed, like, how do you motivate people to keep going? Like, what are, like, when you're saying, don't give up and resilience is key, do you think you're born with that, or do you think that it can be learned?
That's an interesting question. Because do you know who Ty Lopez is? I don't know if
How
you
do
know.
I know that name?
He's a social, like a digital marketing person. That's how he started. But because he's done so well in digital marketing, he's now gone and bought like Radio Shack and what else did he buy? Dress Barn, maybe. I don't even know what other
Yeah.
companies that have gone out of business that he's like bought now for their names. Toys R Us, maybe he bought. I don't remember, but
Oh,
he's
wow.
bought companies that like he's going to
Like
now just
well-known brands that he's going to relaunch.
yes, that have gone out of business. You're right. So anyway, what he did he's a great like things that you can listen to. Like he reads a book a day. And so, and then he
Good
talks
for
about
him.
it. So I like have his app that I listen to is whatever. So anyway, one of his things that he talks about was
Writing
being
it
able
down.
to pivot. Being able to pivot is incremental. And so he brought up a point where like, if you ask somebody in high school, like who's going to be the most successful, you might say the smartest, the prettiest, the captain of the, whatever,
Yeah.
most popular, whatever. It's not. It's the one who is able to like withstand anything. And it's kind of like going back to like way back when you can like adapt, when the creatures adapted to who we are today, right? Those are the ones who lasted the longest. And so he talks about all that in this book. I can't remember which book he read to do that, but I think you can, but I do think you'd have to have some adversity in your life at some point, right? And maybe that is the adversity that you're facing, but I think the people who are the ones who are most successful are the ones like a Tony Robbins who had a shitty, I'm sorry if you're not supposed to curse in here, childhood, that you're like, okay, he already, grew up with a shitty child. He knows what adversity is. And so he's able to kind of pivot and do that. Right. And I think a lot of people who are super successful, you'll look, they probably had not the best childhood because they were able to withstand anything and keep going. And so I do think it can be learned, but I do think you have to have that grit. And maybe the grit is being a Division I, athlete in college, and you learn that grit there.
Yes.
But you have to like learn it at some point. I don't think you're born with grit. I think you're thrown into it and you have to learn it.
Yeah, because of a crisis or a situation. That's usually when people create change, is because of some sort of specific situation that
well, we all kind of just went through it, right? So anybody can say, we just went through a pandemic, right? And especially these teenagers, like we're still in it, yes. But I mean, these poor teenagers, like they just kind of went through this like thing where they sat in their room, traumatic. I mean, that is traumatic. So in a sense, we've all just kind of went through a crisis, right?
Yes.
And
it's how you come out the other side with either reinventing yourself or like you said, pivoting, or pivoting's kind of overused now, but that they're not calling this the great resignation for no reason.
Right, exactly, because we're all looking at it. So to answer your question, I think any entrepreneur, I think as long as you can hold out as far as like financially and however else you're running, your life, that that you can. But I mean, a lot of the women I've talked to, like literally, like I had to mortgage my house. I sold off my jewelry because I knew this was going to work. It just was a matter of time. Right. And so it's like, what is your conviction? And how they're like, I was a single mom. I had no other way to make money. I couldn't just work at minimum wage. I had to create something for myself to make more money. And I knew I had to do it for the sake of my children, right? It's like that why. You have to
Yeah.
have that why.
I love that. Yeah. You're basically talking about defining somebody's purpose
Mhm.
and how they're going to get there. So well, you and I could clearly talk for hours. And so you have so much wisdom and knowledge. And I love this interview because I think it's so different than so many of the ones that I have had, because we've really talked about some real stuff around finances and tangible tools. My question for you is really, I always like to end on values. And I'd love to understand a little bit more about what you feel like your top 5 core values are and how they guide you every day in your decision making.
I think number one, I would need to know that at the end of the night, when I put my head on the pillow, I did the right thing. I really truly believe that, or at least I believe that I try to treat everybody equally. I try to do the right thing. I definitely am always, probably to a fault, willing to help other people out, because I do feel like what goes around, I believe in karma, like what
Building
goes
community
around
and giving back.
comes, giving back, because what goes around comes around, right? If I'm a jerk, it's going to come back to me. Or if I cheat somebody in a contract, or it's going to come back to me. Like, I definitely believe that. So I also believe in empowering other women. I love to know that helping other people see their dreams come true. That's probably why I also like investing in other women, seeing other people's dreams like happen, or their,
Well, you were the same way with Beautycounter.
Mhm.
You would bring the entire team together to your home, opening your home, spend the money on all that. That's because you care.
Mhm. Yeah, and I also believe in like more the merrier. I'm always like, and be inclusive. Like, I just feel like we're all different. We all have we're all fighting a battle that you might not see, and so it's
Absolutely.
like, have empathy for people. Know that it's taken me a long time to get to this point, where like I used to be like, flip somebody the bird because they cut me off or whatever. And now I'm just like, you know what? You don't know what's going through them. They either didn't see me, maybe they're a jerk, but I'm going to just assume they're either in a rush, they didn't see me, there's something that happened, or their kids in the hospital, whatever, right? Just
Mhm.
assume the best in people. And I truly believe, like, you put something out there positive, it comes back at you. You have to get your body, yourself to a higher resonation and energy. I know you
Mhm.
believe this too.
Absolutely.
Um, and the good things come. Like, you can harp in that negative energy and have people that are around you that are super negative, and you could just be stuck there, and it's just,
Mhm.
you're not going anywhere. You're
Well, you
stuck
are
in the
what you
mud.
attract.
Yes. I love that.
So why
Yes.
not be attracting the resonation of the energy and the types of people that you want in your lives, you know?
Right. Because I really do believe this. So for anybody, like, just fake it till you make it, believe that you're already there, whatever the saying goes, because it really does work. Because all of a sudden, when you are at a higher vibration, it does. I don't know what it is, but doors
It
open,
like
people,
amplifies.
it
That's the whole
does. And
manifestation process.
it's truly, it does work. I do believe that. And anybody that's negative and making you feel bad about yourself, get them out of your life. Like, even
Mhm.
if it's family members, like, it's
Or
just
shift your
not.
energy, shift the energy, like, or
Mhm.
try to shift the relationship. If that's not possible,
Mhm,
then you have to
exactly.
shift out.
Yeah, I don't know if that was 5, I just kind of, but I
I
do
like it.
think all that is kind of where it needs to be at.
So thank you for sharing all of that. And I think that
Thank
all of
you.
those resonate a lot with who you are as a person. And I would love for you to leave the audience with anything you would like them to know, like where do they purchase your book? I know you have some courses. I know you have an event that's even coming up, and obviously there are people all over that watch this. So I'd love for, or watch and listen. I'd love for you to leave them with your Instagram and all the important details, not only just about Badass CEO, but also about your Lyme's disease, because that's an important component of your life. And it
Yeah,
also requires you to set boundaries on your time and your investment as well.
it's true, it's true. So my website is thebadassceo.com. My Instagram is badass.ceo. I'm also on LinkedIn, which is Mimi MacLean, MacLean. My book you can get on Amazon, which I'd be so appreciative if you, it's not that expensive. I think it's $12 something. And if you can leave a review, that really does help. But it's how to become a badass female CEO. And so as far as the Lyme, it's Lyme 360. So if you know anybody that has Lyme, or if you have Lyme, come check me out there. I do know it's a very lonely disease. And so just surround yourself by positive things at what's going on to help each other out is what I'm trying to do. And so, yeah, so thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate getting the message out for both.
Yeah, and I really appreciate your time, and I really value our relationship and the reciprocity. So going back to one of the things that you actually said in your interview about women lifting each other up from the ladder, I feel like we've always had a very collaborative relationship, and I really appreciate you. So thank you so
Yes,
much.
I know. I miss seeing you. We used to see
Me
each other all the
too.
time when I was in LA, but
Back to LA.
I know. Well, thank you so much.
All right. Well, you have a wonderful day, and everybody, please look into the book, The Badass CEO. Mimi MacLean is just an amazing machine. I'm just kidding. See you.